This is Inside the Wolf's Den, an entrepreneurial journey with Shawn and Joni Wolfswinkle.
Welcome back to Inside the Wolf's Den with your hosts, Shawn and Joni Wolfswinkle. Today we're actually going to be talking about our top 10 favorite books, right? Because, I mean, almost every episode that we have a guest on, we always ask them, like, what's your favorite books that you've read? And we have a lot of listeners that continue to learn, and we encourage you to continue to learn. So we're going to go through those today.
Yeah, it's a continuation from last week's podcast where we talked about self-development and improving yourself, whether personally or in the work space. So as a professional. And one way of doing that we mentioned was books. Mm-hmm. And you know, we're really big on listening to podcasts, reading books, and improving yourself. So
knowledge is power, right?
Yeah, and so every time that's why we have 3 top questions that we ask almost every guest we have on the show. And so one of them is, what's your favorite book? And these are all these aren't in any order, like, you know, sequential, like of our favorite to, or
they might be of yours.
You're at the bottom, so maybe you're the most favorite.
Thanks.
Yeah, we're gonna end with yours, but it's our top books that we got a lot of impact off of either a long time ago. I think the top one. Couple of these I think we read 22 years ago.
Yes, I was actually. So we want to start with the first one, right? How to Win Friends and Influence People. Yeah. So we had this book, and I think our original one, it had the pages all falling off. Yeah. It was like brown.
It looked like it had been like sitting outside in the sun. But so How to Win Friends and Influence People is one of our first ones, and it's by Dale Carnegie, and this is one of those classic books that just goes with the times.
It is a classic book.
And just never goes away and just keeps being reread. And we had a guest on one of our podcasts that talked about he's been rereading books lately, especially through COVID. And it's cool because you have a different perspective when you read books.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, because you're in different stages of business or your life, right? And so they may mean something different today than what they did 20 years ago.
Absolutely. And so like when we read this book initially, so I think we mentioned in maybe podcast 1, episode 1 or episode 2, we talked about our story and our journey. And one thing that Joni and I did really early on, whether good or bad, but I kind of recommend it. I think at some point, if you're in somewhere between 18 to 25, I think you should take a job or doing something in sales.
Absolutely.
Because you learn so much in sales that's going to apply to every area of your life, whether it's finding a spouse, a new job, being an entrepreneur, whether you want to or not, you're going to have to do some kind of sales.
Yeah, well, it's getting you out of your comfort zone, right? And, dealing with people, which this book goes through a lot of how to actually deal with people.
Correct. Right? How to get people to, how to be influential and influence people to, and that's key, whether that's how I got Joni. I was very influential.
Or maybe how I got you. Just kidding.
But it's crucial. And so when we first started reading this book, we were part of Amway, if you guys remember that, and we used to sell soap to door to door. And
we still order the soap, by the way.
But that was probably one of the hardest. I can't take that. Maybe not. Maybe it wasn't as hard as property management. I don't know. It was tough because talk about rejection, and because you start off with friends and family, so you're like thinking, oh, these people are going to support me no matter what. No, that's not the case, because those are probably the least likely people to order your product and think you're.
Well, we were 18, 19 years old as well, so that was, for an 18 and 19-year-old, that was hard, right? Yeah. Because, I mean, I know 18 and 19-year-olds right now that they don't want to get a job because they're too scared. Yeah. Right.
and so we had to reach out to people, cold call, show the plan, show up. We showed at so many doors, and like you make an appointment with somebody and then they're not even home. Or you set an appointment to show them the plan, and then they no show you. They probably left on purpose and like, let's get out of here before they get here. So we can't tell them no. But anyways, so this is one of the books that they recommended when you were in Amway, and it actually was really impactful.
And it helped us when we started Amway, and then it also helped us during when we were knocking on doors, pre-foreclosure doors, right? I mean, that took a lot of guts too to knock on doors as a husband and wife, and had a lot of doors slammed there as well.
And how to influence, and number one, that's a great analogy or example, because when you're door knocking, we were door knocking people that are in pre-foreclosure. So number one, you have a couple minutes to win that person over.
Yeah.
And you have to do it really well. And so we took keys out of this book of like things to say and things to just get them to drop their guard, make them feel comfortable, listen to you. And then from there, once you've got that guard dropped, then you can really start influence them, and we would have to convince them to, hey, we're your best option in the circumstance you're in.
I mean, quickly, within 2 minutes, you have to build enough rapport with them to let them invite you in their home.
For them to like you.
Right.
And that's the key. Yeah. So next one is Never Lose a Customer Again by Joey Coleman. And so this is one that we read as an organization. We had all our team read it, and you want to share?
Yeah, it's a great customer service book. I mean, there's so many tips and tricks in there to customer service. I highly recommend that. And I mean, we talking about our customer service advisors, right? That's kind of one of the reasons why we put our customer service advisors in place, is we wanted to provide that extra level of service to our clients, right? And so, it's one of my top books.
Yeah, that was the reason I think we went that route, was because what the book really talks about is turning a sale or a customer into a lifelong loyalty buyer or a user of your product. And kind of, there's other books that talk like fanatical fans, and that's really what this book's all about, is creating fanatical fans, people that just love your product, want to share it with other people, and then want to stay committed to you and using you. So a good book on customer service.
Yes. So. The next one I really like. There's a story behind that one.
So the next one is Living with a Seal by Jesse Itzler. And Jesse, number one.
He is crazy.
Yeah.
This guy.
Married to
the Spanx girl, right?
Yeah, the woman that founded Spanx. But he is, number one, I highly recommend you just follow him on Instagram or Facebook. He's really an entertainer and fun to watch. Kind of crazy things he does. Being one, like he's an ultra marathon runner and those kind of things. But yeah, he met a SEAL. The premise behind the book was, it's his story about a 31 days of training with the toughest man on the planet. And that toughest man on the planet has also written some really good books himself that I highly recommend as well. But they talk about the journey of him inviting the SEAL to live with him for 30 days and the crazy training that he went through. So like waking up at middle of the night in it's a pure blizzard and going for a run with no protective gear, nothing but your shoes and some shorts, and but extreme situations that a SEAL has maybe put their body through and are used to. And but I think it brings perspective on hard work, grit. Discipline.
And then you're stronger than you really think, right?
I think that's the most important thing. Is like, I think our bodies, we can push ourselves a lot further than we mentally think we can.
Absolutely.
And so that they challenge. That's what he's really doing, is challenging Jesse's mental capability. And so the funny thing about this book was we read it as an organization too, as our it
was part of our book club. So if you guys don't have a book club in your organization, this was a fun book really to read with your organization.
And they actually had a blast reading it. It's entertaining. It's an entertaining book. But so we read it I think in like fourth quarter of 1 year. And so for a Christmas gift, our Albuquerque office got me a gift, which was I think it was 30 or 60 days, I don't know what it was, SEAL boot camp. SEAL boot camp, just to preface it. So
real SEALs teaching this boot camp.
Yeah, so it was at a park in Houston, which was like 30 minutes from where I lived, which is fine. But and it was at 5 o'clock in the morning, every morning. 4:30 or 5. It was early. And so I was like, all right, I'll commit to this. I'll show my staff that we can do this, that, we just read the book. I'm like, I'm going to push myself. And so I signed up for it. And it was in the middle of winter, which I granted, Houston doesn't get crazy winters, but it
was cold.
It can get cold. And one morning it was like ice on the roads or ice on where we were having to do push-ups. And it's like every morning, it was cold. It was a lot of times raining, and it didn't matter what the weather conditions, you had to show up, and there's no, and so like it was so early that every morning, like I would, forget half of my things that I needed. And so like I would show up there, and like other people had like yoga mats, because we were having to do push-ups and sit-ups on the concrete in the parking lot. And so people had like mats and stuff, and so I was like,
He's like,
oh.
maybe tomorrow I'll bring a mat.
Yeah, so I kept forgetting. Every morning I kept forgetting my mat, and I would just do push-ups and sit-ups on the concrete, and it was miserable. And so like for whatever reason I didn't get the memo, but one week I showed up and I didn't realize it, but what it was Hell Week for this boot camp. And so like everybody else knew, and of course I didn't. So I'm early. I'm like, man, I got my yoga mat today, so I don't have to do sit-ups on the concrete.
His coffee on the road.
Yeah,
He's like,
I was like set. I was like, this is a good morning. I show up 5 minutes early, and all of a sudden I show up there. It's pitch black. Can't see anything. And some guy is cussing and just yelling like, get the F over here. And I'm looking around. I'm like, okay, this kind of freaky. Like, what's going on? And then he says it again. I'm like, is he talking to me? Like, what? Who? Okay, why? Like, why are you yelling at me? And
well, because he's a SEAL.
And so he does it a third time, like, and he really like is pissed at this point. I'm like, okay, he's talking to me, and so I'm fumbling. I get my yoga mat out, and things are falling out of my car because I'm trying to hustle and or my truck, and I run over there, and I get there, and they're all doing like
bear crawls, right?
Like bear crawls, yeah. Like, okay, this is gonna be tough, and like this doesn't look good. And he's like, oh, here, look at this guy. Shows up with his effing yoga mat, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, this is the one day that I bring it, and you're gonna give me crap. And anyways, I was bleeding on my knees from doing bear crawls for so long, and it was the roughest day. So I show up to the office, go home, take a shower, show up to the office. I had my hair was all wild. I was wearing 2 different colored shoes.
The funny is you coming to the office like wearing 2 different color of shoes. That was pretty funny.
And I was like, wow.
Ask him if he actually came back the next day.
No, I didn't. Heck no. That was it. I was a one and done, and I was like, thank you for that experience.
Oh, gosh.
But no, I wouldn't do it. I did. There was one other time I went through Hell Week, or like a version of that, and we had to run, but it was a woman instructor, and so I was a little bit better, so I could take it from her, but this guy, no.
All right. Well, the next book we have is The Road Less Stupid by Keith J. Cunningham.
I love this book.
Yeah.
This is, in my opinion, one of the best business books that I've ever read.
I love when he says, go think, you'll thank me later, right?
Yeah, so he ends every chapter with, go think, you'll thank me later. And that's really what the book is premising and goes over is, it's really for the owner or the entrepreneur to really analyze and strategize and think. And there's a lot of truth to that. I think sometimes we get so in our business, so consumed with it, that we don't take a lot of time to sit back, analyze, maybe write stuff down of what we're going through, or what's the challenge, and maybe writing some things down and some solutions and some pros and cons, and but thinking and just sitting some time to really think and meditate on what's the best strategy. And a lot of times there's answers that will come out of there.
Right. And that's part of so several years back, we thought when we read this, we took some time out of our week to just really have our thinking day, right? Nothing else planned, just sitting there, silence, just thinking. And I mean, it makes a huge difference.
We started taking Fridays off just to think and ask challenging questions. That's a big thing also, is he ends every chapter with a series of questions you can ask yourself.
Yes.
So it's just, there's quality questions that get you to think like, okay, do we have the right strategy? Are we doing this right? Do we have the right people? And it just gets you to think and think through problems and scenarios that you're going through in business. So highly recommend it for any entrepreneurs or business people out there.
Yes.
So, the next one is The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clausen.
This is also a classic.
Yes, we read this with Amway. So, and we have an ancient one of these too, but this is a newer version. But just age-old wisdom, right? About investing. It to me, it was the principles, right?
Yes.
It's the principles that extend through any generation, and it's the principles of saving, investing, your resources, and using those correctly, and how it goes back to all the Babylon years of the people that did that, and they might have done it through a different widget or different times, but it was still, the principles are all the same.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It's a good
classic.
one. Oh. The next one is one of my favorites. That's the next one's Atomic Habits by James Clear, another one that we actually read with our organization. And really, this one talks about the small daily habits that add up to remarkable results, right, and changes in your life. Which sometimes it can be hard to keep those habits, right?
Correct.
And so,
and it's so, we read it as an organization, but it really benefited a lot of people, and people got a lot of stuff out of it. But it was, you don't realize that number one, everybody has habits, right? And whether you know it or whether you realize it or aware of it. So part of the book's just becoming aware of the habits you already have and realizing which ones are bad for you and which ones are good.
Right.
And then creating awareness and mechanisms to change those habits if you want something different out of life.
And it doesn't have to be big changes. We talk about just making the small incremental changes that's going to move you forward to that next level, right?
And we just don't realize that it takes small little, and that's why I think it's so hard or people overlook it, because it's being consistent.
Consistency,
and being,
for sure.
And just being consistent to create a new habit or break one and change it to where you can make an impact or a result. Because we are who we are or where we are today because of the habits that we've created in our lives. So if you want change, then you got to change the habits.
Exactly.
And so this book really goes into how to do that, how to practically break bad habits and then implement new ones. So highly recommend it.
Yeah. And if we just improve 1% each day, right, which we talk about this all the time, like how much further you'll be at the end of the year. So.
Next one is Traction, which by Gino Wickman, very popular book. It goes over EOS, which is the Entrepreneurial Operating System. If you
every business owner should read this.
Yes, if you're not on EOS or scaling up, I highly recommend some kind of system. But we got introduced to this maybe 8 years ago. It's been a while.
Yeah, and we reread it and totally got a different perspective now, right?
Yes, and now that we've been on some kind of system for a long time. So we just our journey through this is we read it. I tried to implement some things through the book myself, and then we got introduced to Scaling Up, which is very similar type of like system to run your company. A lot of similarities, and then we hired. The best thing we did was we hired an implementer or integrator, and that met with our organization, worked with us, really got us going on a system, and it took at least a year and a half to fully adopt a lot of the meeting schedules, the strategy. But if you really look back to our success over the last 6 years, it's because of this, because of EOS or Scaling Up is why.
Sure.
And it's, you don't really realize it until the end of the year, and you look back and you're like, wow, we accomplished all this list of tasks and rocks and strategy that we were trying to accomplish, and we make. Again, it goes back to like how we make big changes over a long period of time of just doing small, we have some bigger rocks and bigger challenges or strategies, and then we break them down into smaller quarterly rocks and then even down to monthly or weekly rocks. But they all add up to making some remarkable change. And so,
and you don't have to do it all at once too. I think when we read that like several years ago, I think we started first with our daily huddles, which made a huge difference in our organization and getting all the team, together at once at the start of the morning, right? And we go over priorities, stocks, like really the most important 15 minutes of the day. So that's really where we got started with it.
Yeah, and then so today we have a integrator in our company that. Which our COO, and he runs our level 10 meetings. He runs our quarterlies, runs our annuals, meets with the leadership team. And that was a big thing too, is implementing a leadership team.
Yes.
So that kind of really drives your company and drives your organization, drives the leadership for sure. And the strategy, and then, and sets the far out goals, and then aligns the teams to where they're going and chasing and working all towards that goal. So it creates similarity or continuity within your departments and where they're headed. And the next steps that we're kind of working on is not only the leadership with the L10s, but now our pods.
The leaders of the pods.
Yeah, implementing their own L10s weekly
Right.
in their own groups, and so it's traveling downstream now to where, so that our layers within our organization are all working towards the similarities and the common vision.
Yeah,
for the
I'm
company.
excited about that. I think next year we're going to really see the results of that.
So I highly recommend reading the book, and then I think it's best if you hire an implementer or integrator to come in and the difference, an implementer gets you started and you have to pick somebody in your team to kind of keep it going. An integrator is somebody that actually does it in your organization for you and runs your meetings. So
Absolutely.
there's several out there that if you want to reach out to us, send us an email. We can make some recommendations on some implementers that can come into your organization.
Next one's fun.
I don't know about that, but the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. So great book, and there's a lot of truth to it all. So we read this as an organization. We even went further and took it one step further by getting the was it like handbook or the
It's the workbook.
Workbook that your team can do as and so we did our leadership team. We worked through the workbook as part of our annual one year, and we lived the book. Which, if you've ever read it, there's a lot of dysfunction in a team and screaming and yelling, and we went through that. And we went through that, and it was not easy. That's just to be quite frank. And it was some difficult conversations, some uncomfortable conversations, and really what the book is going through is in the dysfunctions of a team that you're trying to work through are like absence of trust. So where are team members not trusting, or who's not trusting, or fear of conflict.
Yes.
So avoiding conflict or avoiding these uncomfortable situations, lack of commitment, avoidance of accountability. So not holding each other accountable. And that's the big thing with the book is like, as a leadership team and as a team like that, you should be able to have all that continuity, or that you should be able to call somebody out on something.
You should be able to have those uncomfortable conversations with your leadership team and not have somebody, get upset, and but yeah, you should be able to do that.
And then the last one was inattention to results. And so I think we had at the time, had some conflict. We had definitely some dysfunctions within our team, and we tried to work through that and look, and learn from it, and how as a company, or how could as a team could we improve on all that. And I think where we failed was we unraveled it all and undiscovered it, but I don't know if we necessarily were able to improve ourselves moving forward. I think we just said okay, this is all our problems, and let's just move on and just push. I think.
I think it may have, but I really felt like after doing this book that there was a different level of trust too. And I thought that the leadership team in itself worked better together and could trust each other more, right? And so there were some positives to that.
Yeah. I don't know if we listened to everything at the time when everything was discovered, but you live and learn. And so anyways, great book for teams and creating high functional teams. Yeah. Right. And that's really what the book, and a lot of that's because of there's just, people come in with baggage into an organization, and they've had different experiences and different life lessons, and the way they were raised, and their childhood experiences contributes to all these reasons why people have communication and trust issues, and you're working through all that because you want to create a team that can gel and trust each other. Really like dynamite, sports teams have and stuff like that. So.
I think we should read that book again. But the next one,
the
next one is Profit Like the Pros by Ken Corsini. And this one, yours truly is in this.
Oh, thank you. Chapter 19, please. Check it out. Selfless plug. But
Mr. Shawn Wolfswinkle.
Ken Corsini is Flipper. He was on Flipper Flop. I think they're still on there. On HGTV, Flipper Flop Atlanta. Him and his wife, and so great people. He wrote the book, and what he did was he collaborated with a bunch of pros, and so they share their best deal ever and just did talk about it. I think we've broken the best deal ever this year. But
yes.
anyways, so we're going to have to rewrite our chapter. But the great book and just it's neat. I love to read books like this because I love to hear about people's stories and like
how they got started,
their journey on a particular deal and how they put it together and structured it and those kind of things. And I love to hear those kind of stories. That's why I still love to watch HGTV like shows because you get to see all that and the drama behind it all. But it's fun. And so I wrote about our best deal ever and then was on Bigger Pockets for it and stuff like that. So it was fun. And you can read all about my best deal ever. So chapter 19 on Profit Like the Pros.
Yeah. Awesome.
And the last one is Joni's book, The Choice Is Yours, which we've talked about on this podcast. And so we thought we would also share it again. Balancing success as a wife, mom, and entrepreneur. So
if you don't have this book and you want it, email me. I will send you a copy of it. But yeah, the choice is yours. So ultimately, we all have choices in life, right? And ultimately, the choices that you make is the life that you live. So you got to choose wisely, right? So my book really basically talks about the choices that I made and my success story, so to speak, and balancing being a wife, mom, and entrepreneur. So I have a lot of choice points in there. It doesn't have to be for women. It can be for men as well.
Yeah. So it's really your testimony and your journey so far in your life of what got you to where you are today and the choices you made and how the consequences of those choices or where it landed you and stuff like that. So, it's a great book, and Joni is very vulnerable in the book and really shares her personal life, the good, the bad, and the ugly at times. So
absolutely.
Check it out. So, well, that's our top 10 books. We're going to continue to ask the question to our guests and continue to hear about new books. And these are just some of them and ones that have had impact on us. And so we just wanted to share those with you. There's so many great ones out there. And if anything, we just want to encourage you to start reading and start developing.
And if you have a great book that you've read and it's not up here, send us an email. We'd love to hear it because we are always constantly wanting to learn as well. So.
Awesome. Well, we have a great guest next week for the show, and so we're looking forward to that. And everybody have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you all next week.
Yes, and if you like it, please, you'll leave us a review, like it, and we will see you.
You've been listening to Inside the Wolf's Den, an entrepreneurial journey with Shawn and Joni Wolfswinkle. Tons of entrepreneurial podcasts are out there. Talking. But Joni and Shawn are living it every single day. Their portfolio now includes many franchises and medium-sized businesses. We talk about the trials and motivators of successfully running a business. Join us again soon for another podcast. But until then, reach out on the website at InsideTheWolfsDen.com, on Facebook at Inside the Wolf's Den, on Instagram at Inside the Wolf Den. We'll see you again soon. This is Inside the Wolf's Den. We'll see you next time.